Hello, and welcome back to the Corruptive Chaos channel. I'm your host, Corbin, and today we'll be taking a trip down to Egypt to review Death on the Nile.
Someone is dead. The crime is murder. The murderer is one of you.
You lie in my face! Lock the doors!
The murderer is here and will stay here.
So, Death on the Nile was directed by Kenneth Branagh, who is a bit of exceptional in that he is a usual actor-director, and the same is the case for this film, in that he stars in it as the famed detective Hercule Poirot, and the film features a huge host of stars in this large ensemble cast. I think three of the actors are notable, not because they're standouts particularly, but because they forward the plot, really. It's what gets the murder mystery moving and gets all the suspicions aroused between basically every character involved. And those three actors would be Armie Hammer, Gal Gadot, and Emma Mackey, who are in this love triangle. Armie Hammer and Gal Gadot's characters are getting married, and they're on their honeymoon on a ship on the Nile River in Egypt, and things unfold from there. Emma Mackey's character follows them onto the ship that they are in, but besides that, it takes us quite a while to actually get on the Nile River. If I want to give us a little bit of a background on the earlier parts of the film, I would say that the film might take a while to actually get people engaged with the actual murder mystery, whereas we get a lot of context up until that point. So the very first scene is a bit of a prologue for Poirot's character, played really wonderfully by Kenneth Branagh, and he is a World War I soldier in Belgium. It's in this beautifully shot sequence, in black and white actually, set in the days of World War I, and it seemed like actually a bit of an homage to Stanley Kubrick's Paths of Glory.
To France.
Because in that film, in Paths of Glory, there is this wonderfully shot tracking sequence that I believe lasts over 5 minutes or so, and it seems like Branagh is really homaging that sort of classic war type of film in this early scene. There is a wonderful tracking shot done in the trenches that is maybe 2 or 3 minutes. It's really wonderfully shot, and it gives us a background on Poirot's character, and that's about the only purpose that it serves. Beyond that, we are then sent to earlier, present day in the storyline anyway, which is the film is set in 1937. Poirot is at this party of sorts, and he's watching these characters, and just like the subtle things that Branagh brings to the character of him just watching, of his reaction shots to what is being unfolded, that's where we set up this love triangle of sorts between those three characters I mentioned.
Death on the Nile has a veneer of sophistication, sexiness, glamour, and romance.
And so that's where we get this romance plot going, where Armie Hammer's character was engaged to Emma Mackey's character, and that falls through from what we see, and we jump just 6 months forward in 1937, and we are suddenly in Egypt, where Poirot is sitting there looking at the pyramids and a sphinx, and we see the only returning character, Book, from Murder on the Orient Express, the earlier film that Branagh directed and starred in as the same character.
The romance of the desert has the power to seduce.
While we're on the subject of Murder on the Orient Express, I would like to say I really enjoyed that movie. It came out just a few years ago, and I thought it was pretty okay. It was average. I guess personally, I'm a sucker for these murder mystery type of films, so I probably enjoyed it more than most did. I think likewise that film had a star-studded cast, just as Death on the Nile does, and I think Branagh really loves directing and starring in these Agatha Christie adaptations.
You know, there is something about that tangle of strangers, pressed together for days with nothing in common but the need to go from one place to another and never see each other again.
My name is Hercule Poirot, and I am probably the greatest detective in the world.
So beyond that, I would like to say that the film looks glamorous, both in a cinematography sense and in the actual physical production. So while on the subject of the cinematography, this film, maybe somewhat surprisingly, was shot on 65mm film. It was not shot digitally like most films are nowadays. That 65mm gives it this grand scope. Everything looks huge and glamorous and extravagant and all the other likewise type of adjectives to describe the look of the actual camera movements and what is being on display here. Even just back and forth dialogue sequences are shot very well by Branagh and his usual cinematographer. One noticeable downside is that the film features many digital effects, and I don't think the budget was there to support really impressive CGI work. The pyramids and much of the Egypt sequences that are on land anyway, not on boat, look very fake. A lot of the CG is okay, or it's noticeable, I should say, anyway. The composites that are done in the background when characters are standing in the foreground in front of, Egypt, it doesn't always look all that great. But then on the other side, on the actual physical production, everything looks extravagant and glamorous. We have this star-studded cast who are all in these extravagant costumes. They're standing in these glorious sets, mostly on the boat on the Nile River.
There is a veneer of sophistication, sexiness, glamour, and romance.
For the costumes of Death on the Nile, Ken wanted to do a movie that was appealing in the sense that it didn't look like a reproduction of the period, taking a much more contemporary approach.
But still, it's all shot very well, and it really lends itself to displaying the physical production very well. The film sort of made me think of films that were made during the Great Depression in the 1930s, and that audiences didn't really want to see downtrodden, really depressing films. They wanted to see wealth on display. Characters that were wearing extravagant gowns or suits and were living the good life during that time of depression.
The dinner? Who can I get? And you come to me with your idiotic little, I'm the one who ought to be in bed.
And this made me think of that because many of the melodramas produced in the 30s featured these star casts, and they were, they didn't feature the worries of everyday life for the average person. And this reminded me of that because, well, the same as here. We have this star-studded cast who don't have to worry about any sort of bad situation back home. They're all very wealthy, and they're having this extravagant honeymoon wedding party for two of the main cast members. Although with such a large ensemble, it can make it difficult to invest yourself in any one particular character. Everyone gets a moment to shine, kind of, especially when they're being interrogated by Hercule Poirot. That's always really engaging moments when he is just eyeing them down and asking them questions and ruffling their feathers, so to speak. Still, with that said, I think the cast does a good job. No one is very exceptional. I have heard some other people say that they liked a certain star, a standout person in the cast. I say everyone did a really good job. So I can't really pick on one person except for Kenneth Branagh as this detective star.
The good Dr. Windlesham proposed to Miss Ridgway when she was still Miss Ridgway. He and the papers both had the deal as good as done. Then came the engorged stallion, and now it's Mrs. Doyle. If I were in his shoes, I'd only come here to put a bullet in the groom. Who are our other guests? Lynette's godmother, who despises Lynette's wealth, and the godmother's nursemaid Bowers, who covets it, as does Lynette's own maid, poor old Louise. Oh, his cousin Andrew. He's a slippery fish. No one except Lynette trusts him. We find Mother and I are the only sane people here.
He does do the same things that you would expect him to do. You know, you do get those exposition dumps right at the end of the third act when you're unfolding the mystery of who the killer is. He has this great dialogue sequence at the end of the film where he, reveals, unsurprisingly, who the killer is. I don't want to spoil who it is because, well, that's the whole point of seeing this film. Although, like I did say, it does take a while to get to the actual start of the murder mystery. It seems like we do get a lot of context, even if it is really entertaining context. At just over 2 hours long, I would say the film is paced very well. I was never bored, or there was never a dull moment, which is the worst thing that this type of suspense mystery can do. Also, opposed to Murder on the Orient Express, I think Branagh's character here actually gets some development. As I said, the very first scene, all about his backstory. And here, he seems more vulnerable, and he really acts like more of a character, but he's still keeping those really fun, eccentric personality traits that he had before. He still has seemingly some traits of OCD, or he really likes his sweets, and he has that ridiculous mustache on his face, which looks amazing to me. So there may be too much context for some people. For me, I wasn't bothered by the first half of the film. It was still very fun, and it gives us maybe too much information about the situation, but fun nonetheless. The film feels quite old-fashioned. I already mentioned films of the 1930s that it reminded me of, and just the cast and the time setting that is placed in, you know, it's not in modern day at all. Really gave it this old-fashioned, glamorous Hollywood feel, which I quite enjoyed. Most people want to see a modern movie that doesn't resemble an old-school, golden-era Hollywood movie at all. For me, I enjoyed that aspect of it. So I don't know that I have too much else to say. If you enjoy these type of murder mysteries as much as I do, I would recommend a couple other comedic murder mysteries, which would be Murder by Death from 1976 with another great cast, and Clue from 1985 with also a great ensemble cast. They're very similar to these types of murder mysteries like Death on the Nile, except have a far more comedic tone and is poking fun at the murder mystery genre. I really enjoyed this film by Kenneth Branagh. He is genuinely a really great actor and director. He's the rare exception, it seems like. I would give the film 3.5 out of 5 stars. That'd be my rating. I was tempted to give it a higher rating, but I don't know. I think I might have been talking the film up a lot, but everything that it does is executed good or well enough. And the cast, like I said, everyone is good enough. There's no exceptional actor. But at least the murder mystery itself is engaging, and you do wonder who the killer is. And I like that the trailers and promotional material did not spoil what the first murder was going to be, who the first murder victim was going to be. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll be having more reviews in the near future, so stay tuned for more.